we are living in the age of media 4.0 where video is the main content.
You know, there are a lot of platforms which are coming where people are owning up their own cultural identities, their own cultural narratives.
I've found the discussions going around the fact that journalism in itself is dying, which might not be true, but could be true partially as well.
Whether it's quote-unquote mainstream media or new media, you have to perfect the art of telling stories.
I see these various platforms as sort of a place to launch your research. That's how I choose to see these tools.
When content is the king, so the need of the hour is to produce pro-Bharat, pro-India content, and then can imagine India's decade. Because we are discussing about news, new age news, so you can also watch, and many are watching on social media. We have a diverse panel here coming from different background, and they will come up with their different perspective. But before starting this session, let me just to widen our scope of discussion, means the topic, new age news consumption. Means I am a student of media, I have worked with media organization. News is any double verified information, double checked, coming from a reliable source. But I think we are going to discuss any type of content getting viral on social media, news website, or elsewhere. And for me, consumption is a very middle class, upper middle class phenomena, because on one side, if we see that there are at least 300 million people who are living in rural areas, they have not access to information. In 80s and 90s, we were discussing about calories intake requirement. So our range would be not just news consumption, but information access also. So ranging from requirement, access to consumption, ranging from information, disinformation, misinformation, and then news. With this background, I will start the discussion. I will request Aditi Paswanji. Aditi is assistant professor in Delhi University for her initial remarks. Aditi.
A very good morning to all of you. Aap sabhi ko pranam. It's an absolute pleasure to be a part of Ideas India Conclave. Now coming to the topic. So I have understood this topic in two segments. First, who is creating the content, the information, the news. And second pattern is who is consuming. And when we see both these segments, I have noticed there's a decentralization which is happening. By decentralization, I mean that now more and more people from the periphery, more and more people from the margin, gendered identities, all these people are really coming up, which has completely democratized the media landscape. And you know, it has also led to some sort of a transition, which is initial those archaic dichotomies, urban versus rural, class struggle, rich versus poor. Now there's more nuanced understanding. The idea and the notion of intersectional identities are coming. Now we don't see Dalit news just as plain Dalit news, but there's a greater emphasis on Dalit women also. And it's just not news of their victimhood. It's also stories of their valor, the stories of their resilience. So all these things, the social media platforms has actually made the news platforms for both the segments more inclusive, I would say. And secondly, with this, you know, there are a lot of platforms which are coming where people are owning up their own cultural identities, their own cultural narratives. 2 years back, we celebrated Azadi Ke Amrit Mahotsav. So we saw that, you know, names like Uda Devi, Jhalkari Bai, which were not very regular in our dictum. Now it's becoming a part of a conversation. And that has solely happened because of this new age media, which is proliferating these stories from the peripheral zone into the mainstream media. The mainstream media in itself is a very debatable concept, that what do we understand by that. But I can say the popular media, which all of us news maybe are very urban-centric media. And people are owning up these. So I would say that both the segments have somewhere completely make the media landscape a very democratized, where the voices which are little unheard now being heard, and the people who were talking about their own stories are now coming up and people are hearing. So, and it is also changing the way the public opinion, and there's a shift in the perception, how people see the news now.
Yeah, rightly pointed out, means in mainstream media, people from marginalized communities, especially Dalit, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, far-flung areas of Kashmir or Northeast, they did not find a space, and social media has provided them that
Absolutely.
space. So media and marginalized, so media is reaching to, but whether this social media is really democratic or really we are able to complete that decentralization process, that we have to discuss. Means in this era of algorithm, the kind of video you see, you will see that kind of video only.
Yeah.
So it is provocative also, polarizing also. So whether it's democratic or not, that is again means we are living in the age of media 4.0 where video is the main content. So whether that is really democratic or not, that we have to discuss more. But before that, I will go to Anushka. Anushka has come up with a good platform on Instagram. That is a new in thing in last few years. Anushka is running a platform called the Tatva. So what is this Tatva and how do you see this? Whether this is just a urban middle class phenomena that people are using these kind of social media platforms, reel means we are calling it a reel of generation of reel and all shorts. So what exactly is that? Why the youth are getting more attracted towards this reel, shorts and Instagram in place of Facebook?
First of all, hi, good morning, everybody. Privileged to be a part of this panel amongst such great audience and even greater panel here. I am Anushka, managing editor, The Tatva. The Tatva is known as the leading youth-run digital media platform, not news. I might make that very particular here. And I come from a media background, and I've found the discussions going around the fact that journalism in itself is dying, which might not be true, but could be true partially as well. And when I say so, I mean that the form in which the journalism and news coverage is being done in the past few years is now becoming obsolete for the current generation, the current age, the generation that will own the future from 10 years now, 20 years from now. And when I say so, what do I mean? The current generation doesn't, why does the current generation not relate to the mainstream media is because of multitude of factors. One being the attention span of the people. The current generation is already bombarded with so much of content at a time, so much so that the attention span has now gone down to somewhat, I would say, 3 to 4 seconds. And if you don't make your point in mere 3 to 4 seconds, you lose relevance. And in this day and age, where previously the mainstream media was known for sensationalism, taking the heads of people, now it's more relatability that resonates with people. So the more you resonate with people, the more people would connect with you, engage with you. And in all of these hours that I've put into storytelling, what I have come to believe is the fact that in today's time, storytelling is not merely words, but it's the impact that your words bring out in the community at large, how they build a community, how they foster the community, and how they engage the community. Because on social media platform, the other thing that's happening is the fact that the feedback loop now has become really small. Where in the mainstream media, you could be on the television just professing something that people might or might not relate with, and that could be just one side of the perspective of the spectrum. Now on social media, there are comments wherein if you have said X thing, people who do not resonate with it will always call you out in the comments, will maybe share on stories, their part of the story, will not, if they do not resonate with it, will not go further. And now it's not just breaking news, but rather breaking the algorithm with the new age media. Thank you.
Thank you. I will come again to you. Means it's about real generation, but what about the depth and analysis? I will get back to you. So, but before that, we have Andrew Wilson with us, and he works with the Hudson Institute and also Center for Future Liberal Society, and he's a research person. He's in the background of many researches since last many years. So Andrew, what's your take? Means in this era of ready recipe kind of news or information or misinformation, where do you see this research part of it? Where is this analysis?
Sure. Well, thank you, Dr. Singh, my fellow panelists, and many thanks to Dr. Ram Madhav, Ms. Rami Desai, and the India Foundation team for very graciously hosting us here at this year's Conclave. It's a real pleasure. I'm here representing a research center based in Washington, D.C., and headed by Professor Walter Russell Mead. who, as many of you know, is a distinguished fellow at the Hudson Institute, as well as the Global View columnist at the Wall Street Journal. I'd like to speak a little bit today about how our center engages with the news, particularly as it relates to US-India relations and developing even stronger bonds between our two countries and looking to develop additional bridges of understanding. And our center sees that objective, our pursuit of that objective, is to consult a wide range of sources. This is not a specific reliance on the Western source base that we are very familiar with, but to really understand the diversity, the politics, the culture of India, is to go out and pursue the range of media outlets, personalities, thought leaders, influencers within this country, to take away a certain understanding of what each of those entities presents, getting a sense of how reliable those sources are, and marrying those sources with what we are familiar with back in the States. We find this to sort of neutralize sort of the narrative, counter-narrative about certain developments in this country, but also in our own country of the United States. And we see in wanting to provide the most objective, fact-based research on the nature of our relationship is to bring those sources together. And that not only takes the form of Professor Mead's written work in the Wall Street Journal, where we endeavor, in my role, to provide research support, but ultimately in each of those articles, we strive to put out the most accurate information in helping both sides understand the nature of the relationship and areas, opportunities, and challenges to that relationship. So that's just one part. The second part, obviously, is I am here in India here today after a very nice visit, my first visit to the country. That is also a big part of this too, to supplement what we are reading about, to really get on the ground and speak with various people, get their perspectives and bring that home to inform our reporting on our trip and to also, as I mentioned earlier, build those bridges of understanding. So I think that's really the main point I wanted to stress here today. I am not a journalist. I am a researcher, an analyst, and a big part of my job is reading, but not only reading sources I'm familiar with or subscribing to certain narratives or lines of thought, but to go out and seek what lines of thought are common in different pockets of the world. And a big part of our work is understanding those here in India.
Thank you, Andrew. So now we have Deep Haldar ji. Deep ji is a senior journalist, though he said that this senior and veteran is just so 20th century. So he has a vast experience in all the three kinds of format. So Deep ji, when we have more than 1 billion phones, more than 600 million smartphones, more than 400 million Facebook accounts, more than 300 million Instagram handles in India. So how do you see the role of mainstream? Mainstream, we can say that broad stream. We have to do broad streaming, not mainstream.
Exactly, that's the word
Very
we
nice.
should.
So because social media is now the mainstream, so in this broad stream, where do you see the existence of the old mainstream like print or even TV or radio? Because Professor Robin Jeffrey, he wrote a very good book, India's Newspaper Revolution, and he covered from 1977 to 1999 that a newspaper revolution took place in India because of the advent of technology, easy access of technology and market. So where is that newspaper revolution with this social media revolution? How do you place both of these things? And how do you place books? He has written 2 very good books. So these books, newsprint, how they exist means even we had Shekhar Gupta ji yesterday and you work as contributing editor of The Print, and The Print is not that The Print. So that is an online medium. So what your is?
Last year, August, I would have agreed with Anushka here. My father's failing health took me back to Kolkata from Delhi. So I'd left my job. And when I was leaving my job, there was this talk of the AI tool ChatGPT and DALI. And people were saying that ChatGPT is going to take away all the newsroom desk jobs, okay, to begin with. And there was this gloom and doom scenario where people said that, okay, journalism as we know it is dead, journalists are dead. but here I am with you, very much alive. So good morning. But I think I do agree with you that mainstream media, the scope of mainstream media is not just limited to a few media houses in Noida and elsewhere in big cities. Uh, with the emergence of social media and with all these YouTubers and podcasters coming out doing news and analysis, the scope of mainstream media is not limited anymore. But to say that journalism as we know it is over would be very, very, very inaccurate, because I think even today the fact checking of anything that happens, any big event that happens, is still mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream media. I would have wished for new media, if you can call it that, the YouTubers, podcasters, to go where mainstream media did not. But if you speak to the book publishing industry, I think it's worldwide, but also in India, they prefer non-fiction to fiction. I think non-fiction books sell well. And people they approach to write non-fiction books, including me, are people who have been career journalists. Okay? So YouTubers, podcasters, all these new media people, they still have some catching up to do. What this has helped though, we have Shefaliji right there, that if we goof up, we would previously sit on a pulpit and talk down. So mainstream media can't talk down anymore. You'll be talked right back, and you'll be, almost forced to walk the straight and narrow towards the truth. I think that's a wonderful thing, and that should have happened long back. Thankfully, it's happening now. But the training that is imparted to a career journalist, even today, is not perhaps the training that a YouTuber, comes to his studio with, unless that YouTuber has been a mainstream journalist. So if you see some of in the news segment specifically, some of the top YouTubers in the country today, they have done 20, 30 years of journalism, including Shekhar. If you see he was here yesterday, if you see his videos, you may agree with him, you may disagree with him. But they get amazing views. I mean, they get almost as much views as YouTubers who have just started out and become popular. So what this has done is, it has made that this entire space extremely competitive and exciting, which is a wonderful thing. So we are watching each other, improving our game, and the consumers of news are better off because of that. Okay, they have a wider bouquet to choose from. There's one more thing I'd like to add here. We'll hear a lot of talk about algorithms, and where in TV it used to be TRP, in print it would be circulation figures. As a career journalist, I always think that algorithms are for machines. Human beings tell stories and listen to stories. So whether it's quote unquote mainstream media or new media, you have to perfect the art of telling stories. Okay, if you do that, you have an audience and you'll be alive. So whoever can tell stories well, will be relevant. You can leave the algorithms for the machines.
Very nice. So I have one round of questions from you, then we will open the discussion, and I will start with you. Means when you wrote that book on Bengal massacre, so it was very well received, and I have seen many videos based on that book only. So how do you see this transformation in young generation, that whether they are reading books and they are getting information from there, or whether they should get information from a relevant, authentic book, then they should go for YouTube or Instagram, or content is good, any kind of content, whether it's information or again misinformation or disinformation. How do you see that?
Well, the fact that those books did well points to the fact that mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream media is not dead. And like I said, book publishers still go to career journalists to write non-fiction in India, mostly. But well, I mean, the fact that there are so many videos about my books serves me pretty well, because the books sell more. But I don't think that there should be, the audience is very, previously one of the mistakes we would do in the media is, we would think that the audiences are foolish. They're not. It's an extremely smart audience. So I don't think that there should be a bar on the audience in terms of their, or somebody should preach to the audience in terms of their news consumption patterns. I think the audience will pick up what they want to pick up. But you'll be told off if you put out something wrong. I think that's the good bit. So I don't think necessarily you should go to, say, a newspaper or a news site. You can might as well get it from what you think is a credible source from YouTube, and many people are doing that. But the good thing is that if that source on a later day proves out to be not so credible, I think there are now enough players in the field to call him out, call her out. So I think that's a good thing.
So, Andrew, the question is related with this idea only. Means, as you are coming from research background, means when we had newspapers and magazines, the deadline was 24 hours or 1 week. Then came the TV journalism. In the evening, they have to come up. Now we are in the age of where every minute is a deadline or breaking news generation. So, how do you see the role of research in this era of every minute deadline?
Sure. Well, I would say that I'd imagine that in this room and outside of it, that there would be a broad consensus to the point that we are very much living in a time of rapid technological change, and with that comes the advent of new technologies as more and more people around the world have access to greater amounts of information through social media and other platforms. People will be inundated with a lot of different sources of information. Some perhaps misleading, others sort of the opposite. But it's incumbent on the individual researcher, on the individual consumer of that news, to not just let the news come to you, but then to also go and scrutinize a wide variety of sources to corroborate what that information is. You have platforms like X, Shorts on YouTube, Reels on Instagram. I see these various platforms as sort of a place to launch your research. That's how I choose to see these tools, as a way to alert me to a particular development, but then from there to go and consult a wide range of sources, not just relying on the one bit of information I first see. But yet again, the news cycle is a fast one. Obviously, people want to be first in reporting certain developments. That I see as very much being a constant, really. There's not much I see where we can control that, but having a lot of information out there, an avalanche of information, it's up to the individual researcher to do a good service to the public, to their readers, to their fellow citizens, to go and sift through that information and to present accurate reporting products to the consumer.
Thank you. Aditi, means I'm coming back to you as I started. In 1990s, there was a magazine called Vanchit Vani. Hmm? It was a missionary journalism kind of patrikarta, then Dalit Andolan Patrika, and these kind of missionary magazines were there, but they died, in the crunch, resource crunch and all that. Now, as you also suggested, that this social media has democratized this space. So how do you see that, whether, means how deep this democratization is? Means how far-flung areas girls are making videos on Instagram. There was a girl who participated in Big Boss from Central UP, and Khabar Lahariya newspaper from Bundelkhand, which was died down, and they have also come up on social media. So how do you see, especially the marginalized girls, how they are using is another thing, and how they are getting benefited from this democratization of media and social media?
Yeah, absolutely they are. So, as you said, journals like Vanchit Vani, they died because of logistical issues. But now that transition, when it has happened in social media, a lot of logistical issues are settled. So you see pages like The Shudra, The Indian Tribal, The Tribal Girl, The Mook Nayak, you have a number of news, which has like more than 1 million of followers. And recently, I'll tell you, when you see the algorithm you're talking about, if there is Chhat, we'll see a lot of videos on Chhat. So it's becoming like a popular, this thing which people are grasping, that one festival of Bihar. There's a festival of Santalis, which is called Surhul, which is just celebrated 2 weeks before the Chhat. Now that Surhul festival videos were getting very popular from some far-flung region of Jharkhand by Santali women who were doing it. So that gave them that visibility, that gave them that consciousness to have control over their culture. And it gave them the, the confidence to own up their own identity. So it's just not consumption and news video creation. In a way, it is helping them to create that tribal consciousness, the Dalit consciousness, which was somewhere, suppressed. And all these pages are giving them that required visibility and boost up to come up with different ideas and also break that hegemonic practices. The hegemonic practices might be in the form of video content creation or anything. And even if you see these Indian Express, it runs Dalitality also, it runs Ram Rajya also. So it is also accommodating. So I feel that, it is empowering every segment of the society by breaking those hegemonic practices. And I want to see that more women are becoming part of it. And other aspect, if you add the economic aspect also, I've seen a lot of tribal products. Like in Chhattisgarh, you had that GI thing which got and chutney. So people are selling those products through social media. And who are those? They are not, and it is somewhere that the brokerage thing which was there, that initially you need to go through a level of different brokerage if you want to sell your product from some far-flung areas. Now through social media, these people from the tribal communities, they're able to. The sari I'm wearing, it's a Mithila painting sari. You'll find it in Rathi and Jatwarpur in Bihar. But today, all of us can access that through social media. So it's just not empowering them culturally, it's giving them a political voice, but it also empowering them economically.
Very nice. Anushka, as you were saying that attention span is very low, means for me it was 40 seconds, but I just got to know it's 4 seconds. So we know about the reels, but what kind of comments you receive on your social media handles, especially on Instagram? That is my first question. Second, that how do you see the future of social media or Instagram, and what next? Means Snapchat or anything else is going to come? Means 5 years back we were not knowing that reels would be the new in thing, or YouTube Shorts. So what kind of comments, or when I'm saying comments, that means how analytical mind they are applying after watching your easy content?
So when we talk about any piece of content, it is not really sure that every piece would reach out to everybody in the exact same depth that it reached out to me. So while some of the people would read the entire headline, the sub-headline, and the caption is the main detailed part of the entire story, the others would just take a crisp information from the headline and move on. And when I speak for my age group, which is 25, 35 to 40 years of age. Half of the people are no longer consuming news the way they used to consume news 3, 4, 5 or 10 years back from now, where they were very much into in-depth analysis. Now they just need talking points, make their point and move on to the next thing. And that is also because of how social media landscape in general has been transformed over the years. The COVID era was a peak social media era because everybody was glued to their devices, and that is how the attention span game began majorly. So the comments, to answer your question, some comments might just be about how the post in general looks. The other comments could be investigative or commenting on the entire post. Some could be a biased comment. The others could be a counter to the biased perspective that they say is what we are trying to portray. But we also need to understand what one considers as a bias is a perspective for the other one. And mainstream media also had their fair share of misinformation and biases. They were still followed. And if we were to talk about mainstream, I feel mainstream media is not as relevant as it should be because they were there on the center stage when they could take the leap of faith and transform themselves entirely for social media. They are yet to do that in major forms. But for today's day and age and the current generation, I believe what the generation believes is the fact that somebody from amongst this age group has to show up on the screen when I'm watching it. So people my age would not watch a 40, 50-year-old person professing something that is very intellectually heavy that I would not be able to consume and digest the information. So that.
Very nice, thank you. So now the forum is open. We will take 2-3 questions at a time, 2-3 rounds. So anyone can ask. Please give him mic.
Hello. Yes, so I would like to thank the panel for a very insightful discussion. So my question is on the nomenclature of the word news, which has been extensively used by the panel. And there has been a lot of literature in contemporary times which suggests that news is now rather become a misnomer, in the sense that most of the news is now being translated into views. And this is especially the case in television news, where we find that most of the news has been editorialized. So therefore, the news, content in the news is very limited. Most that we find is are actually the views. And this is something that is depicted in the lot of frenzy which we find in television debates. So do you think that this poses any hazards to that people, instead of making their own opinion on the news, the opinions are already given to the people? So your comments on that, open to the panel.
Sir, I'm Dr. Abhishek Puri. I'm a radiation oncologist, far away from the news media and everything else. But me, along with Professor Rajiv Srinivasan, we've been working on the concept of artificial intelligence and the Bharatiya AI. So it's more of a comment, and for the general audience, is that the news has become completely commoditized according to us. Like I was just showing Professor Rajiv that by using Grok, which is a part of the X.com, it has just started summarizing the entire news in real time. So by the time things get published or they get understood, it is already outdated. And nobody needs to, click on the link. It becomes even more imperative when you are looking at the social media for the click-through rates. So that is going to impact a lot of media business per se. And the second comment is that instead of looking at Instagram, Facebook, or any of the meta products, why aren't we discussing that why doesn't Bharat have its own social media kind of a thing? Now, China has utilized it, and in the age of misinformation and disinformation, this assumes, incredible importance.
I am Kattimani, Vice Chancellor, Central Tribal University, Andhra Pradesh. Listening to all, it's a wonderful information what the panel is giving. Regarding tribal world of our country, there is 99% tribal world never appears in the media. Or whenever they will appear, it is only because they're trouble. They're not getting water, not getting electricity, or not getting ambulance. These are the things. Another 1% who are educated and talking against Bharat. How to deal with this? The 1% is in all modern platforms, social media. Another 90%, 99% is only print media. How to go about it? Anybody? Thank you.
So we have 3 questions. You want to answer?
Well, I'll begin with agreeing with Aditi. When I began my career in 2001, I remember an article came out, I think 2001, which said that which asked the question, how many journalists are there in the English language newspaper media space who come from the Dalit community? And the answer was shocking. There were almost no editors who come from the Dalit community. So I remember the article because it sort of, I think it was a newspaper article, and it created quite a stir. And then people said, but you don't have to necessarily come from the Dalit community to speak about Dalits. Now today, all these pages that you spoke about, I think magazines and newspapers, even digital media, would be watching those spaces and would address those concerns, from the content that is being put out on those spaces, and do an excellent Sunday feature, right? So I think what has happened over a period of time is this space has gotten more democratized. So I think going forward, we'll take from each other, take the best bits from each other. And I think the winner will be the audience. The gentleman who spoke about content, being owned by American companies, I think that's a real scare. All your content is being owned by somebody sitting in Silicon Valley. So India definitely needs to have its own social media platform, because you don't own your content. I mean, YouTube, if your YouTube channel does well, then you make a decent amount of money and you can sit here and you can talk about the death of mainstream media. But there's a bigger scare, which is that content is not yours. It is all owned by somebody sitting in Silicon Valley. So I think India definitely needs, like it has its own newspapers and channels and websites, it needs to have its own platforms, which are owned by Indians.
So we have two questions here, means
Yeah.
very important questions. First, to have a pro-Bharat social media handles, and before that, to have our own social media platforms. So once you have your own social media platform originated from Bharat, some experiments were done in the past, and to create the kind of content as Professor Kattimani is raising the question. So how to do that? Means is there any recipe for that, or we are yet to do some work on that?
First, I would like to just add on that the same question still lingers on. What is the representation of the marginal communities in the print media, in the mainstream media, in the newspaper, or in the digital media? That question still haunts. I still get calls from people asking that, someone that we can, but people are taking that effort with this
Yes.
diversity, equity, inclusion, on the table. People are taking effort that, the gendered of the table should be maintained, there should be person. So that's a good move. I'm seeing the transition from 2000 to 25. Second, coming to Kattimani sir, what he said, absolutely, there are maximum stories about victimization. Because victimization, pain is something which I don't know what the algorithm function, but pain is something which you psychologically connect more. But there are a lot of pages which are also celebrating the victoryhood. And that struggle and that transition is happening. And we need to have more and more pages which talk about about empowering these people. You have, when we talk about Dalits, all the tribals, we always have this, okay, tribals are archaic, Dalits look in a certain way. But we have Dalits like Milind Kamale, Kalpana Saroj, we have all those who are running more than 100 CR or whatever company they are running. So these are the better side of a new Bharat that we are talking about. But these are not very well discussed or they're not visible. So we need to come up with a lot of pages. I think we should.
So we can have another round of questions.
Here, I entirely agree with Aditi Paswan's theory of cultural promotion through YouTubes and other social media programs. Whereas when it comes to news, able to hear? So first, let me congratulate you. Really, it's correct to project the cultural things. YouTube is necessary and other Instagram-like things. Coming to news, and here they mention so many times information. Information is not knowledge. Information can be either good or bad. Okay? And then let me tell, I am in total support of mainstream media because they have regulation. Because they have regulation, and then they project both sides of views and they give actual stories. We can question them, we can read them at leisure, and sometimes, as you said, we can't read fully. Our attention span is very less. When I see the TV, I see the headlines, and wherever I want to scan, I'll scan or skim. That's it. I don't read like earlier times fully in full length.
Thanks.
So that is there. These social media channels, they have to behave responsibly because you are grooming younger generations. My nieces and nephews, they argue with me. We saw in somewhere in a WhatsApp or some other channel, this way, this way, this way. This is correct.
Ma'am, please come to your
And
question.
I'm not going to elevate.
Yes.
So the thing is, democratization of media is good. At the same time, the knowledge should be given in a factual way. Do you all agree?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Any other question, please?
So my problem is actually, so from childhood onwards, I have a habit of reading newspapers. So what happened is, in between, I saw the movie Janagan Mana. That is, then I realized, okay, this mainstream media is somewhat partialized and all, somewhat highlighted, and also I'm not able to believe mainstream media nowadays. So how to that one? So for now I am using source for news, what is going on around the world. So some of the YouTube who are neutral persons will be there. That I am using for getting information. So I lost actually the trust about mainstream media. how to get back it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Jaydeep Mazumdar, I'm from Calcutta. I'm practicing media person. Can I sit and talk?
Yeah, please.
See, there's this popular narrative that there's a democratization of the media space, and it's quite impossible to suppress any news that is happening, any event and all. But my experience in Bengal, and I want to comment from anyone in the panel on this, my experience in Bengal has been that a repressive state can very easily suppress news that is very inconvenient to the ruling dispensation, and it happens, in my experience, very often. What do you have to say about this?
Any other question? Okay.
I'll take Jaydeep's question. I think it's a very interesting question, and I have to sadly agree with what he's saying. And I think this is where new media comes in. So, Jaydeep, if you have seen this young guy called Nirajan Saha, he runs something called College Street, this thing portal, and there's Shafiqul, of course, who at great risk to life and limb does news from Bengal, which perhaps quote unquote mainstream media is not able to do. So I think that's a space for new media to explore. It should do more. However, the point that gentleman was making about not being able to trust mainstream media, so things like free junkets and the paid promotions. Now those were things that led to people questioning, more and more people questioning mainstream media. But that's happening with YouTubers as well. You have paid promotions of films in very popular YouTube channels. So I think the problems that we faced are problems they are also facing now. So I think but with more media coming in, I think we can keep an eye on each other and grow together. So one does not necessarily have to sort of survive by killing the other.
Okay, so we are running short of time. Any last question from anyone? Yeah, please. Mike, please.
Thank you very much. I mean, very interesting to hear everybody's viewpoint. I just wanted the issue which you talked about, Ms. Pandey, about social media. The younger generation wants to see the younger face. There are two issues which I'd like to flag, and I'd love to hear your opinions. The first thing is I've just got back from Bangladesh, and I think there's this great angst against India, the anti-India feeling. And one of the reasons that they've attributed to is the social media projection of the Bangladeshis, especially in Bengal, in the vernacular media out there. And this is primarily the social media which has influenced this younger generation to feel that everything that has happened right or wrong with the old dispensation which was in power is thanks to India's thing. So I think the maturity of the media on social to be able to convey the right messages needs to be looked at by these people or platforms that are conducting it. The second issue is, as you said, the attention span is very small. Now, the attention span, when I was younger, I had opinions which were very profound, and I felt very strongly about it. But I think as you grew up, you realized that there was another viewpoint. So I think something like what you have influencers on Instagram, I think you need mentors on your social media platforms who give the other viewpoint so that the younger generation gets a more balanced perspective.
Right.
So comments on that.
Thank you everyone. In 1960s, Marshall McLuhan come up with this idea is media is message. So you are responding?
Yes, sir, I do agree with what you have to say. But the fact that the way the thought process of people is working is surely one, because most of the data that we feed into the algorithms are being owned by companies that are settled abroad. And that's the way they own the algorithm, they work with the algorithm. That is what they want to project, and that's how the world looks at it. The one way to go about it could be a very India-based approach of going the one that the gentleman suggested, that having something that is India-owned or owned locally by the country itself. But since I come from the digital space itself, very sadly, I would want to tell you all that that has major challenges when it comes to the business part of it. Funding is a major part. You do not get in-shots. I hope everybody here is aware of in-shots. The founders just hold 2 to 3% of the company. And that is how, when the major of the company is held by investment firms, you know where the editorial decisions are coming from. So the funding, if sorted, can be great for the businesses working in India. The Twitter alternative that we had for India, it's completely shut now. Why? The funding crunch. So what we need to focus on is more how to incentivize India-based approach on such platforms, how to get up such platforms, and how to encourage the youth to really be behind those platforms, running things in a very literate manner, not illiterate ones. So digital literacy is still something that has to reach out to the masses at large. Yes.
So
Thank you.
when we are using news or information in this new age, so we need pro Bharat content, that is for sure, which is coming out from this platform. For that we need pro Bharat social media platform, then only we can produce that kind of content with a good numbers. So when content is the king, so the need of the hour is to produce pro Bharat, pro India content from this and social media platform originating from this line only. Then we can ensure and then can imagine India's decade.
Yes.
So thank you very much for participating in this panel. Thank you for your patience. Thank you very much.